So we are good to go. We have a small portion left in the last week's handout that is on LKS1, and then we will quickly cover up the financial ratios also, because I thought we'll cover up that also, and then once and for all we'll move on to the SLFRS 9, and then we have the statement of cash flows. Okay. So what we'll do is today we will cover up the LKS1, the remaining part, and then we'll move on to this financial ratios, right? So last week I gave you all a clear idea or understanding about what is LKS1 and what are the fundamental requirements of LKS1, the objective, and what does it look for, how the presentation will look like. Now, I hope that you would have gone through the two financial statements that I shared with you. And in addition to that, any other financial statements that are available in the web, you can, as I told you, you can go to the Colombo Stock Exchange website and you can select one of your own choice of a company, and then you can go to the financial statements. Okay. So you have to do a little bit of working on that to differentiate the different kind of financial statements. So now, since you all are in the bank, you might be looking at a financial statement of a bank. But more than that, it is very important for you to know the other kinds of businesses. How does an apparel business look like? How does a tourism sector look like? Or the maybe a hotel industry's financial statement look like? So you have the sectors listed in the stock exchange. You accordingly, you can go and look at a financial statement. But all in all, I have to mention that for your exam purposes, the compulsory question on question 1 is preparing a financial statement of a bank. So that's why we are focusing more on a bank's financial statement. So what I have shared with you is also of two banks where how they present their financial statements. So you can always go to your respective banks also. There is no harm. But I just took these two as one of the financial statements. Then in addition to that, I need to mention that in addition to the financial statement preparation of a bank, you also need to know the other types of financial statements as well, right? But in addition to that, now if you look at the current the financial statements that I have shared, there will be assets, liabilities, and then equity. So the components that are appearing in the assets and liabilities might not be that much familiar to you, because we know what are the normal assets, what are the normal liabilities, those we know. But what appears in the financial statement is a little bit different, which we haven't learned yet. Okay, some of them are, yes, you might see cash, balances with banks, those types, of course, you are familiar. But there will be certain items with specific names which we have to learn. So that we will cover under SLFRS 9, which requires some background knowledge about financial instruments, right? So that we will cover. So coming back to this topic where we were looking at LKS1. So we know that when we look at the financial statements, I spoke about this also. What are the things that are required when you present a financial statement, like the name, whether it is a single entity, that is a parent or a group, then the date of the reporting period, then the presentation currency, the level of rounding, all those we looked at. Then we also looked at how the items are disclosed. We say that on the face means the financial statements that you prepare, which are called the primary financial statements, how those are presented. So we see that there are certain items presented on the face. Certain items are presented in the notes. Certain items are presented in the notes, right? So in addition, we also spoke about shares, how the shares will be shown and the value, how do you determine the value, all those I spoke about. Then the other reserves that you have in your equity, that is your profits. Then you might have revaluation reserve, then you might have foreign currency translation reserve. All those now we have learned, so you should be able to look and understand in the financial statement, right? So now what we are going to learn today is somewhat not really when you look at the bank's point of view, the interpretation will be not as such what we learned today, but theoretically, which is also an important component of a company's financial statement. Okay, so that is the distinction between current assets and non-current assets. Now we know in a financial statement you have assets. Okay, right, let me go to the board and explain it. So I hope you can see the board. Now, when you take a financial statement, the structure of the statement of financial position or the balance sheet will look like where you have the assets, then you have the liabilities, there is a question one person has asked whether we need to prepare the financial statements in the form of what I have presented in your portal. No, we will not give the page numbers or maybe the notes. Those are not required, right? What we will do is we will only give the numbers, the text part and the numbers. We don't go into the details of notes or the other details. That is not relevant, right? So when you look at the balance sheet, we have assets, liabilities, and then equity. So we call this statement of financial position. Please remember, do remember these names, which are very important. Statement of financial position. So you are talking about a company's financial position. Now, when we look at the financial position, we have assets. And I also told you that you will present the financial statements of a financial institution in the order of decreasing liquidity. Decreasing liquidity. Okay. Here also. And that is not applicable for the equity component. Equity is not on any other like liquidity order. So here the liquidity order is decreasing. Here the liquidity order is decreasing. That is, the topmost liquid asset will be appearing at the top. So in the example that I give you, you would have seen cash and cash equivalent. That is the most liquid item that you will have. So going like that, the last item you might see will be other assets. Other assets, right? So this is the presentation as far as a financial institution is concerned and a bank is concerned. But there are trading companies which will show this in a different manner. As I told you, they will be showing in the order of increasing liquidity. So what happens there is their least liquid asset will be at the top. So in other words, cash will be at the bottom. Cash will be at the bottom. Now what we are going to look at here is, when you look at a company which is like other than a bank, they split this component into two levels. How they call it as non-current assets and then current assets. This is what their classification is. Now, in the bank's financial statement, you don't see anything like that. But in a trading company, this split is very important. That is, under the assets, you have two components called non-current assets and current assets. Similarly, under liabilities, also, you have non-current liabilities and then current liabilities. So what does this mean now? Current assets, non-current assets, current liabilities, non-current liabilities means it's the same set of assets or similar assets. You will take this and put it into two categories. That's what we are doing. Here also you will take the liabilities and put them under two baskets. That's it. But the way that you put there has a logic. How you put it there has a logic. That is what we are trying to learn. Now you know when you do a trading business, we call something as debtors. And we also have creditors. So this we learned as the third topic in our course, right? So these debtors and creditors are what? Basically, when you enter into a credit sale, so we were looking at the debtors and creditors. So now what happens? Debtors is where you make a credit sale and then you allow the person who has purchased goods a certain time period. Let's say 30 days or 60 days, whatever. Now, if this person pays it within the 60 days or 30 days, there is no problem, right? Sometimes what happens, this gets dragged. This person doesn't pay, right? So what happens then? The debtors, which is, we call it as a receivable. Receivable. Okay, this is receivable. The debtors means it is something which is like a money cash form, which is not yet received from the debtor, but you are going to receive it. But this receivable can drag. They might not pay within the stipulated time period, right? That is one aspect. Similarly, creditors means where you have to pay. You have to pay for the credit purchases that you have done. We call it as payable. Payable. Now, let's assume the other side of the receivable. Now, you are supposed to pay this within 30 days or 60 days. But you are not in a position to pay it because you don't have money or you don't have adequate cash. So what will happen? You will also drag this for a longer period. Now, this is the concept. The receivable and the payable. First, we look at the receivable because receivable is an asset. Now, if this particular receivable or any receivable, right, which is receivable within a period of less than 12 months, within a period of less than 12 months from the balance sheet date. Now, if you are preparing the financial statements for the period ended 31st December 2020, let's say that is the current financial year. So from this date, within the next 12 months, means up until 31st December 2021. If you have anything as receivable, that is known as current assets. Am I clear with that? In your balance sheet, you have assets. These assets are now going to get classified into two. non-current assets and current assets. Now, what is current assets? Current assets means any asset that you have in your balance sheet which is receivable within 12 months from the balance sheet date. So, if it is 31st December 2020, then it is 31st December 2021. Up until that time, anything that is receivable, you will put it under current assets. Rest of all the assets will go under non-current assets. Non-current assets. Similarly, anything that is payable within the next 12 months from the balance sheet date will go into current liabilities. Anything beyond that go into non-current liabilities. So this is the concept of current assets, non-current assets, current liabilities, non-current liabilities. Are we clear on that? Do you all have any questions? Because this classification has to be understood very clearly. If you are given a trial balance, if you are given a balance sheet, you should be able to identify what and what will be current assets and what will be current liabilities, because that is very important. Okay? So let's go to the presentation now. I hope you can see the presentation. Okay. Is it visible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Right. So the current, non-current distinction. An entity must present current and non-current assets as separate classifications on the face of the statement of financial position. Now this, earlier we said that what to be shown on the face of the statement of financial position. But now here they say an entity must present current and non-current assets as separate classifications on the face of the statement of financial position. Now the two statements that I gave you doesn't have this. Why? Because those two are banks. For banks, it is the central bank who gives the format. Okay. So the banks are preparing financial statement based on the template given by the central bank, not what is given in LKS 1. That distinction you have to clearly understand. Banks, finance companies, all those will follow the template given by the central bank. But in the case of all other companies, they will follow LKS 1, and that is how they should show. On the face of the financial statement, they need to show current and non-current assets. Okay. So let us make a note there. Please make a note. Even though the LKS 1, requires the companies to show current and non-current. Assets or liabilities. On the face of the financial statement or you can say on the face of the SOFP, Statement of Financial Position. On the face of the SOFP, it will not applicable. It will not be applicable. It will not be applicable. It will not be applicable for banks. For banks. Because they present their financial statements. They present their financial statements based on the templates provided by CBSL. Okay, so that is based on the CBSL templates they prepare their financial statement. So this will not be applicable. But what they will have to do is, in the financial statement, that is, now we spoke about notes. In the notes, they have to show this. In the notes, they have to show this. Okay, right. A presentation based on liquidity should only be used where it provides more relevant and reliable information, in which case all assets and liabilities must be presented broadly in the order of liquidity. So the order of liquidity is very important as far as presenting the assets and liabilities of a business. And you know how banks or financial institutions present their assets and liabilities, what is the order of liquidity, and what other companies will do when it comes to the order of liquidity, because there had been questions in the past papers, so you have to be very clear on the order. In either case, the entity should disclose any portion of an asset or liability which is expected to be recovered or settled after more than 12 months. So what does that mean is, now we looked at the current, non-current distinction. So current means anything within the next 12 months. Non-current means anything more than the next 12 months. Right? That is from the 13th month onwards. Right. For example, an amount receivable which is due in installments over 18 months, the portion due after more than 12 months must be disclosed. Right. Let me explain it with an example so that you will understand. Right. Right. Now we know that you are a company who has, let's say you have a loan, right? I'm just thinking a loan. You have a loan which is receivable, right, on monthly installments. Monthly installments. And this loan has about another 36 installments. Or let's make it very simple. 25 installments. This has another 25 installments, right? And each installment, let's say, 10,000. Each installment is 10,000. So you know what is the total outstanding of the loan? That is how much? 250,000. 250,000. Now the question is, how will you present this loan in the financial statement? Right? So now we are, let's say we are reporting as of 31st December 2020. Right. Now the question is, I have assets. There is non-current assets. I'll put it as NCA. And then I have current assets, CA. Short form. Now the question is, what you will show, assuming that this is the only item that you have, how will you show this loan? Will it be current assets or will it be non-current assets, or what will you do? That is the question. So we go to the account definition. Under the LKS1, they say in the financial statement on the face, you need to show current assets and non-current assets. So what do you mean by current assets is anything that is receivable for the next 12 months or within the next 12 months from the date of the balance sheet. From the date of the balance sheet. So from this date of the balance sheet, what is receivable within the next 12 months is here, more than the 12 months is here. So let us look at this. If you look at this, what is receivable in the next 12 months is 10,000 into 12. 10,000 into 12. So I would say loans receivable $120,000. Is that clear? Loans receivable 120,000, which is going to appear under current assets. Now the problem here is the loan total outstanding is 250,000. But I am showing only 120,000. So what does that mean? I need to show another component under non-current assets, which is 130,000. 130,000. So this is what the LKS1 says. Take the asset, look at what is receivable within the next 12 months from the balance sheet date. Put it under current assets. Anything beyond that, put it under non-current assets. This is what the LKS1 requires. LKS1 requires. I hope this is clear. Better for you all to take it as an illustration. Take it as an example and note it down, because this is how you should do, or this is how you should look at when you are looking at companies' financial statements, how they are presented. How they are presented. So please take down. Okay. Right. So what is current assets? An asset should be classified as a current asset when it is expected to be realized in or is held for sale or consumption in the normal course of the entity's operating cycle. I will explain what is operating cycle, don't worry about it. So basically, this is the definition for current assets. Okay, but in exam sometimes you might forget this. Okay, if you really say, sometimes these definitions might not come to your mind. So it doesn't mean that anything if you write to give the meaning of what is a current asset will not be wrong. So as I explained to you, in your balance sheet, any asset which is receivable within the next 12 months from the balance sheet date is a current assets that you can write. Okay, this is like a more theoretical definition, but if you show the examiner that you know what it is, still the examiner will consider it. Okay, so you have to write it in your own words, which exactly means what it is. Or they can say is held primarily for trading purposes or for the short term and expected to be realized within the 12 months. Now, the second part of the definition, or this part, really means, what does it say? Is held primarily for trading purposes. Now, let's say you are a trader. What do? You bring in goods in wholesale or you manufacture whatever and you sell it to people. So when you bring it to your showroom from your warehouse, it comes in the form of stocks. I explained this to you all. A manufacturing organization, there is work in progress, and then when they bring it into the showroom, it becomes a stock, right? Because we did LKS too. Now you sell it from the stocks only. So as a result, these stocks that you bring in to the showroom is actually expected to be sold within the next 12 months. If you are not in a position to sell it within the next 12 months, actually that item becomes obsolete. No point in keeping it. Okay, if it's something that is consumable, of course, or maybe say something that you can eat, of course it is not going to be there for the next 12 months. You can't keep it for that long. But something that is an item or equipment, the expectation is you somehow need to sell it within the next 12 months. Once you bring it to the showroom, no point in keeping it beyond the 12 months period because it becomes obsolete or it becomes outdated. So in other words, what we are saying is the stocks that you keep, or in other words, whatever that you keep as stocks in your financial statement will have to be considered as current assets. Will have to be considered as current assets. So now we are looking at few items or few examples. What are those? Cash. Anyway, that is going to be a current asset. Any bank balances, because those can be easily taken from the bank within the next 12 months. You don't need to wait for too long. So those becomes your current assets. Then we also looked at debtors or receivables. Again, that is current assets. Now we are looked at the stocks or inventories. Again, those are current assets. So what about fixed assets? The tables, shares, all those. Obviously, they are not current assets. You will use them, but what is the definition as per LKS 16? The expectation is that you will get the economic benefits in the future. That is why you are depreciating them. So definitely fixed assets are not current assets. They are non-current assets. They are non-current assets. So I have already explained to you what is non-current assets. Then I will also go into the current liability. So as I told you, it is expected to be settled in the normal course of the entity's operating cycle or is held primarily for the purpose of trading to be settled within the next 12 months. So you have to settle it. Now say if you have an electricity bill, can you keep it for more than 12 months? Obviously no. Then your electricity connection will be disconnected. Okay. Your telephone lines, you can't do that. Anything who is providing the security services to you, can you do that? They will go out. They might not provide you the security service. So you have to be very clear what is payable within the next 12 months. When you have something to be payable within the next 12 months, you will call that as current liability. Anything else will go into non-current liability. Okay. Right. Now we look at what is this operating cycle is. The operating cycle of an entity is the time between the acquisition of assets for processing and their realization in cash. So very simple, very straightforward, but let me give you an idea. Right. So the simple understanding of a operating cycle is where we say if you are a trader, right? So you bring in stocks. And you sell them, right? Assume that you sell this and get money. We are talking about credit sales. Because cash sales, you can immediately collect it. We are talking about credit sales. So you do a sale on credit and you collect it. The cash is paid only after, let's say, 20 days. This is the time that we are talking about, part of the operating cycle. That is the time that you take to convert your stock or the date you acquire this asset and the time that you take to convert it into cash. But what we do is, even though we say it very simple like this, it's not the real scenario here, right? Because we talk about cash inflows and outflows. So what happens when you bring in, if you are a manufacturer, still there is a problem. If you are not a manufacturer, still you might bring in these stocks for cash or credit, right? So there is a component where you will also have to pay. And it might sometimes take time. So the operating cycle is actually a combination. Right? So that is the next topic that we are going to do. The operating cycle is actually equivalent to debtors.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, the board is kind of blurry.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. I have stopped the presentation. Operating cycle is equivalent to debtors turnover period plus stock turnover period minus creditors turnover okay. So it's like a combination. What you mean by operating cycle is made up of these three components. Now let's try to understand this formula. What is this is, first I'll take the stock turnover period. Stock turnover period is where you have some goods or you have manufactured some goods. Now you bring it to your showroom, right? And it is in the showroom. From that day, the day that you brought in this good into your showroom, from that day, how long you take to sell it? How long you take to sell it? Let's say you take about 15 days. You take about 15 days. That is, you bring it today to the showroom, but it takes about 15 days to sell that thing. That is on credit terms, right? Sometimes you might sell it on cash. That doesn't have an impact at all. We are talking about the credit terms. So you take about 15 days to sell that. Now you have sold it. So you create a debtor. Now this debtor is given a credit period. Let's say you are given a credit period of 60 days. 60 days. So what happens? This debtor can pay you, come and pay you within the 60 days that you have given. So that is from the sale of this stock, another 60 days you have given. So let's say he comes and pays you after 55 days. So within the time credit period, but he pays in 55 days. So altogether, from the day that you brought this asset or the goods into your showroom, it has taken 55 plus 15 days for you to make money. Make money. During which period you might also need to pay to your creditors. To your creditors. So you need to manage that also. Because sometimes you might have brought these assets by purchasing on credit. By purchasing on credit. So what happens? That is also a problem. So you need to pay for it. Let's assume that you take about 35 days to pay them. That is from the date of purchase. From the date of purchase, you take about 35 days. 35 days. Now look what has happened. 55. Let's make this 30 days. 30 days. So 55 days debtors turnover, that is your debtors to come and pay you. It was 15 days that you took to sell your stock from the showroom, and you took about 30 days to settle your creditors. So effectively, the answer here is 55 plus 15 is 70, 70 minus 30 is 40 days. Now this is what called your operating cycle. Operating cycle. That is, in effectively, from the date that you have taken to acquire an asset to receive or converting it to cash. Now basically, this is the starting point. From there to here, you purchase it, then you manufacture or you bring it to the showroom, and then you sell it. and the debtor comes and settles it. So effectively, what we are talking about is 15 here, sorry, 55 here, 15 here, 30 here, which gives you the 40 days. Now the question here is, you don't know how to do this, you don't know this number, and this number. So that we will learn in the next topic, how to calculate those. But what we need to know now is, what is an operating cycle is. Operating cycle is debtors turnover period. We call this DTP. This is STP. This is CTP. DTP plus STP minus CTP is your operating cycle. Please take down. Very important. So we are going back to the presentation. The operating cycle of an entity is the time between the acquisition of assets for processing and their realization in cash equivalent. That is the definition. But the formula that I gave you now is how you calculate the operating cycle in terms of number of days, right? So that brings us to the end. I don't want to discuss this because this is not relevant at all. As I told you, how you present your P&L and how you call it. So I have given you examples, the financial statements of two banks, and you can also go and look at how the companies are presented. So that is in line with the requirements of LKS 1. But what you need to know is, in the examination, you need to prepare a statement which is known as statement of comprehensive income. That is, which includes your P&L as well as your other comprehensive income. That is what you need to know. Okay, right. That brings us to the end of this chapter. So we'll go into the new topic, which is on financial ratios. Do we have any questions? Do you have any questions? Right, fine. So let's quickly go into this topic. We'll try to finish it off today so that we can start the next topic next week. Right, financial ratios. So financial ratios is not, what do I say? It's not a very important topic as far as your examination is concerned, because there might be questions here and there in the multiple choice, or maybe in the part one, first question, or maybe in as a part of another question, you might get a ratio to be calculated, right? So basically what you need to know is generally what are the ratios calculated and what are these. So this is a more common set of financial ratios that we calculate. But if you really look at, for the banks calculate ratios more than this. But those are bank specific ratios. Those are specifically where the central bank has designated those ratios to be calculated for the banks, right? So, but here what we are looking at is the more generic financial ratios, So what is a ratio? A ratio is the relationship between two variables. So you know what do you mean by a variable? You would have learned in when you did the O levels, or maybe in A levels, those who have done the maths might know what is a variable is. A variable is an element which can keeps on changing. So now we are talking about two variables, where you get two variables, both are changing, and you are trying to establish a relationship between those two. Say for example, you have two variables known as X and Y. That is the most known and common variable that you know. So this X and Y, if you build up a relationship, that is known as a ratio. That is known as a ratio. So analysis of accounting ratios will be done based on the information furnished in the financial statements. Mostly what companies do is they prepare the financial ratios based on the financial statements that they have prepared. So what happens in the banks also, if you are like a officer who is evaluating credit papers, that is the loan applications, sometimes you might have to look at their financial statements and prepare or calculate certain ratios. Say for example, this, how do you calculate the operating cycle? Because they don't calculate and put the operating cycle. So some people, I mean, if you are a person who is evaluating a loan application, you might want to know how quickly they convert their cash stocks into cash. So that is what operating cycle is. So you need to calculate by looking at the financial statements of the company, what is their operating cycle. So in order to calculate the operating cycle, you need to calculate the DTP, STP, and the CTP. Okay. So you need to do all these groundwork to arrive at one particular number. But what we are talking about here is ratio means it's a relationship between two variables. So ratios could be presented as a percentage. We know what is a percentage is. Or sometimes we say this is this many times of this. How many times? Or we call it as a ratio. A ratio is to 1. So these are the types of presentations of ratios. And what are the most common ratios that we talk about when it comes to financial ratios? We call them as liquidity, profitability, gearing, investment, and turnover. So there are 5 types of ratios that we talk about: liquidity, profitability, gearing, investment, and turnover. So turnover, you might now know what is turnover is. Basically the debtors turnover, creditors turnover, and the stock turnover. Right? So before going into the liquidity ratios, let's look at so what do we say here? We say that a ratio is a relationship between two variables. So we say variable X, variable Y. We are trying to build up a relationship between these two variables. So what do we do? A ratio is basically something like this: X divided by Y or Y divided by X, anything. This is how you build up a relationship. This is how you build up a relationship: X divided by Y or Y divided by X. Now, the result of this, how will it be presented? It could be a percentage. It could be a percentage. Or it could be, we say, times. It could be times. Or it is a ratio is to 1. So we say, I give you an example, 2:1. You would have understood, seen this in grade 6, 7, like when we were doing the primary education, you would have done that. in the secondary education, that is in the middle school. 2:1. So what do you mean by that? X is to Y is 2:1. X is this many times of Y. X is this amount of a percentage of Y. That is what we are trying to establish. It could be a percentage, it could be times, or it could be a 1 ratio. Okay, you can take down this. Okay, so now let's look at each of these ratios one by one. So we'll start off with liquidity ratios. Liquidity is referred as the financial ability of a business to meet its short-term liabilities. So what do you mean by liquidity? Whether I have adequate cash to meet my liabilities. Sometimes you might have to pay your utility bills. Sometimes you might have to pay your taxes. Sometimes you might have to pay for your purchases. So the ability of yours to pay these liabilities is called liquidity. Now, how can you reflect this? How can you reflect this in your financial statements? By way of calculating two important ratios. What are those? We call it as current ratio and the quick asset ratio or acid test ratio. Right? So I am not going into detail of the definition. Definition is given for your purposes. What is more important from the exam perspective is this. This is what important. How you calculate this ratio. You see, what we have learned is being used here. Now under LKS 1, we learned what is current assets, what is current liabilities, what is stocks, everything that we have learned. So when you call or understand what is the current ratio is, current ratio we call it as current assets divided by current liabilities. Current assets divided by current liabilities. So you will get an answer. You will get an answer. What do you mean by that? Your current assets are how many times of current liabilities? Your current assets are how many times of your current liabilities? Right? Then, what do you mean by quick asset ratio? Quick asset ratio is from the current assets, you take out your stocks. From the current assets, I told you, stocks, if you are keeping it for more than 12 months, there is no point. So immediately you have to try and sell it. If you are just keeping it, then it is not going to reflect in your liquidity. That's why the quick asset ratio is calculated by removing the stocks. So current assets minus stocks divided by current liabilities will give you the quick asset ratio. The quick asset ratio. Okay. So what is the expression of this current ratio and quick asset ratio? You can present it in the form of 1:something, or you can present it in the form of number of times. But when it comes to this current ratio and quick asset ratio, you need to know an additional thing with regard to the trading businesses. With regard to the trading business, because bank, they follow a different guideline. for banks, they don't calculate this current ratio, quick asset ratio things, right? They calculate something called liquid asset ratio, or they also have another ratio called LCR. So those are different kinds of ratios that the banks use. But what we are learning here is more or less for a trading business. So for when you look at a trading business, there are certain benchmarks. If you look at a company, you should be able to say whether they are good in liquidity or not. Okay, so there are certain benchmarks. Now, what are these benchmarks? When it comes to the current ratio, the generally accepted norm is 2:1. 2:1. I think earlier I wrote it on the board. 2:1. What do you mean by 2:1? For every current liability, you have two current assets. Two current assets. In other words, let's look at, you show a number in your financial statements as current liabilities is 50 rupees. But your current assets is 100 rupees. Your current assets is 100 rupees, current liability is 50 rupees. Now, when you divide one by the other, what happens? You get an answer of 2:1. 2:1. Okay, let me give you a simple example on board. So you have current assets, let's say 100, current liabilities 50. Okay, so inside these current assets, you have stocks of, let's say, I'll make this let's have it like this: 100, 50. Let's have this as 50. Okay. So the current ratio, what is current ratio? Current assets divided by current liabilities. Current assets divided by current liability. That is CA divided by CL. So CA is 100, CL is 50, which gives you an answer 51, 52. So 2:1. Okay. Quick asset ratio. Quick asset ratio. Current assets minus stock divided by current liabilities. So current assets 100, stocks is 50, and current liabilities is also 50. What is the answer? 50 upon 50, which gives you 1:1. So I have taken an ideal example in this scenario just to make it more prominent with regard to what we are trying to establish. Now, when we look at a trading business, we say that the benchmark ratio for current ratio is 2:1. The benchmark ratio for current ratio is 2:1. The benchmark quick asset ratio is 1:1. 1:1. That is what we say. So I have taken this example just to make it more relevant for what our understanding. So current assets 100, current liability 50. I have taken stock cash also 50 because this stock is included in the current assets. Huh? You have to remember that. Stock is included in the current assets. So, to look at the current ratio, we take current asset minus current asset divided by current liabilities. So that will give you 100 divided by 50, 2:1. When you look at the quick asset ratio, you take out the stocks from the current assets divided by current liabilities. Okay, I'll name this as S. So that will give you 1:1. So what we are seeing here is the ideal scenario. These are the ideal scenarios. But companies have to try and manage within these levels. Sometimes their actual position might be more than this. Sometimes their actual situation is more than this. Say for example, if a company is having a current ratio of 5:1, what do you mean by this? 5:1. Is it good or bad? Let's put it like that. Is it good or bad? It's bad. Somebody says it's bad. Okay? Why? We need to establish that. When you say good, still you have to establish it. When you say bad, still you have to establish. Now, when you say good, yes, of course it's good because it has already met this requirement. So this is the standard. So you have to meet that. Okay, 2:1 is already covered here. But what is the point? You are going into 5:1. 5:1 means to settle one liability, you have 5 current assets. To settle one current liability, you have 5 current assets. No point. Why? Current assets means it's of no use. Just when you are keeping current assets more and more means you are not earning much. Your profitability levels will be much more lower. So that is why the liquidity and the profitability has an inverse relationship. If you try to have more liquidity, then it will eat up your profitability. If you try to have more profitability, then you have to compromise on your liquidity. So it is very important that you have the optimum level of liquidity to maintain or sustain profitability. Okay, so these are some concepts which you have to learn and understand. The dilemma between profitability and liquidity. Liquidity is good. We don't say it's bad. But having more liquidity is a problem because it will eat up your profitability. Eat up your profitability. Okay, quickly take down this, what is there on the board? We have to make a note. Okay, take down. For trading businesses, the benchmark ratios for current and quick assets. Are respectively 2:1 and 1:1. 2:1 and 1:1. However, this may vary from business to business, depending on their type of business, and the level of liquidity, they want to maintain. Therefore, maintaining an optimum level of liquidity, is very important for a business to be successful. Okay, right. Then we get on to the profitability ratios. This is again what you know. I'm not going to teach you something new. So the key profitability ratios are of 4 types. One we call it as a gross profit ratio. The other one is the net profit ratio, or we call it as gross profit margin or net profit margin. And also there are another 2 ratios which are known as return on capital employed and return on equity. So I have given what it is. Gross profit ratio reflects the gross profit percentage that can be earned from sales. So what are the 2 variables here? The gross profit and the sales. Then net profit ratio is reflect the percentage relationship between net profit and sales. So very straightforward. Return on capital employed means measures the return of the business for the total capital employed. I will show you what is total capital employed is. Return on equity means measures the return of equity shareholders for the total equity invested by them. So now the return on capital employed and the return on equity is more towards the shareholders, because they will be interested to know what is happening in the company, because they have invested money. So with the invested money, whether they are going to get an adequate return, whether they will be provided a substantial return in terms of the profitability of the business. Okay, right. Let's look at the ratios. Gross profit ratio is calculated, gross profit divided by sales. So you know how to calculate the gross profit and you know what is sales is, and into 100. So obviously, you know, when it comes to the liquidity ratios, we showed it as a percentage, not as a percentage, it was a ratio is to 1, or it could be times. But now what we are calculating, the ratios are all percentages. So gross profit ratio is a percentage. Net profit ratio means net profit divided by sales into 100, which is also a percentage. Return on capital employed We call it as earnings before interest and tax, which is known as the EBIT, divided by capital employed. Capital employed means what? Total assets minus current liabilities. Now, the problem here is all these formulas you have to remember. In the exams, these are not provided. Okay. So, that's why I did this financial ratios in advance so that you can start memorizing if you want to. Okay. So, it's not the case that I don't request you all to memorize it. You need to understand the relationships. What are the two variables involved and their relationship? Okay. So, return on capital employed is earnings before interest and tax. I let you know what it is, what is EBIT is, and then the capital employed. Capital employed means total assets minus current liabilities. Total assets minus current liabilities. Then the return on equity means net profit divided by total equity. Total equity means what the shareholders have given and what you have done with that. Okay. So these are straight away taken from the P&L balance sheet. You will see. So there is no rocket science here. It's from the financial statement that you take. Sometimes for certain ratios, the information may not be available in the financial statement. But most of the time, those are available straight away from the financial statement. So using that only we calculate these ratios, because any investor, I think the very second lesson that we learned is the users of the financial statements. So among the users of the financial statement, there were investors or prospective investors. So when they want to invest in a company, what they will do is they will first look at the financial ratios. Because that is one item which gives you a quick understanding about the company. Quickly you can understand. So people would like to understand about a company by looking at the financial statements or the financial ratios. So it is very easy for them to calculate these ratios, or maybe sometimes the company itself will calculate and put it. So looking at the financial ratio, you can understand certain things. Now here also return on equity means what is the return that the company is making for the money invested by the investors. Okay. So how you calculate it is the formula is given there. So one item here I want to explain you is the EBIT. We call it as EBIT, earnings before interest and tax. That I will explain what it is. Okay. So let's take a simple example. You have your income, right? I'm just taking a very summarized version, so don't look at it very seriously. Let's try to understand. Then you have expenses. Then you have the profit before tax, profit before tax. Then you deduct tax. So don't worry, we will do this in the last phase is that you have to do this in a more comprehensive manner. So profit after tax. Now this is how the fundamental, very basic financial statement will look like. Income you have, expenses you have, then you have the profit before tax, then you have the tax and the profit after tax. Now what do you mean by EBIT? They say earnings before interest and tax. So here the term earnings means actually your profit. Earnings mean the profit. I hope everybody can see the board. There is no issue in seeing the board, right? Do you all see the board?
Yes, sir.
You can, right? Okay. So earnings means here the profit. And they want to take or calculate earnings before. So your profit before. Interest and tax. Interest and tax. So the value that you need to take is the earnings before interest and tax. So profit before interest and tax. So straight away from here we can look at here. So this is profit before tax. Profit before tax. So this is profit before tax. Right? Or in exams it could be in different ways. So I'll take the standard format. Earnings before interest and tax means you take the profit after tax. And to that, you add the tax. Why? When you deduct the tax only, you get the profit after tax. So we want the profit before interest and tax. So which means this level. So I need to add the tax. Now they want also for you to consider the earnings before interest also. What do you mean by interest here? Now, if you are a company and if you borrow money from the bank or maybe from other companies, whatever, for those, you need to pay interest. So this is the interest that they are talking about. The finance interest. Okay. So where does this interest is included? Here. It is included here. But when you look at the financial statement, you can find this number somewhere in the notes or anywhere you can find out. Some people might show it on the face of the financial statement itself. So inside this, you have an element which is the finance interest. For the borrowings that you have to pay interest. So that interest also, what do? You bring it and add it. And this is what earnings before interest and taxes. Earnings before interest and tax. Okay. So I would appreciate if you can take down this because this is very important. This is very important. Okay, so earnings before interest and tax is this, and capital employed is already given there. That is total assets minus current liability, so that you can always calculate. Okay. Right. So these are the two ratios other than the gross profit ratio and the net profit ratio, because you know that how to calculate the gross profit, how to calculate the net profit, that we have already learned. So these are the other two ratios, that is return on capital employed and return on equity. So return on equity means what? Net profit. Net profit means profit after tax. Please make a note. Net profit means profit after tax. Generally, when we say net profit means profit after tax. Because sometimes what happens is you get misled by the names. So net profit means it is the profit after tax. We call that as net income, or maybe say profit after tax, net profit for the year. So many names are there. But basically it is the profit after tax of the company. Then we also look at the gearing ratio. Gearing ratio. Gearing ratio is something where it reflects how much of money this company is borrowing. Now, generally, the business is run with the money that is given by the investors or the shareholders, which we call it as the capital, stated capital, which I have already explained in detail to you. But sometimes what happens, the companies cannot run only with the capital. They might fall short of liquidity. So what do? They go and borrow from outside. Now, sometimes I'm just taking an example. You are all of a sudden going to your office or to work, and when you see your purse, you don't have money. So it can be withdrawn only when you reach office or on the way off to your office. You can, but when you leave home, you need some money. So what do? You always go to your parents and ask, give me something. Once I go to office, I will return. So that is a small kind of a borrowing that you do. Now, companies also do the same thing. When you don't have adequate money from your capital, what do? You will have to go and borrow from others. It could be from a bank, it could be from another company, any type of borrowing. But we need to be mindful, borrowing too much will be also dangerous. That was, you all know. Because what happens when people borrow all the time, if they are not in a position to settle those, then they are in trouble. So, in order to identify how the company's borrowing level is, or whether they are in danger, the gearing ratio will help us that. The gearing ratio will help you to understand that. So in this regard, we calculate two important ratios, which is known as the debt equity ratio and the interest cover ratio. Debt equity ratio and the interest cover ratio. What do you mean by that? Debt equity ratio is debts, that is all your loans where you have borrowed, divided by your total equity. Total equity is the money given by your shareholders, the profit that you have made, any other reserves, everything put together. So, debt equity ratio tries to understand whether this company is maintaining a reasonable ratio in terms of its capital. Okay. So, maintaining a gearing ratio less than 50% means you are somewhat okay. Okay. So, the moment you exceed 50% means you are showing signs of risks. Because from your capital, about something equivalent, half of your capital you are borrowing. So, that is somewhat a risky sign. That is a little bit of a risky sign. So, generally, companies would like to maintain their gearing ratio below 50. But there are companies who will maintain their gearing at maybe 60, 70, like that also. Because that is their nature of the business. So, there is no standard benchmark as such for this ratio, but generally, when you have a low gearing means you are running very smoothly. You don't have a big issue. You will borrow here and there whenever there you fall short, and then you will recover. There is no problem. But certain companies, they are heavily borrowed. They are forced to borrow. So, they no option. They will keep on borrowing, and that will be at around 60-70%. The second ratio is interest cover ratio. How you calculate that? Again, the same item is coming here. EBIT, earnings before interest and tax, divided by interest expense. So, I was talking about an interest expense, finance interest. That is, if you have loans, how much of interest that you have paid for those loans. Now, you take the EBIT and divide it by interest expense, means this ratio comes in the form of number of times. Number of times. It's not a percentage. So please make a note there. It is number of times. Now, what do you mean by this number of times? EBIT means your earnings before interest and tax divided by interest expense. So, whatever the profit that you earn before interest and tax is adequate to pay your borrowed interest of this much, this many times. This many times. Say, for example, your earnings before interest and tax is 100. Your interest expense is 20. So 100 divided by 20 means 5. So what do you mean by that? With the profit that you have earned this year, you can pay for about 5 times in the coming up years. You can pay about 5 times like the interest expense that you have already paid. That is what the relationship is. So you have to be very careful when you are calculating these ratios and the interpretation of same. The interpretation of same. Okay? Right. Then we go to investor ratios. I'm not going to do the investor ratios now, but let's quickly go into the turnover ratios. Right. Turnover ratios are, as I told you, these are the turnover ratios. Debtors turnover, stock turnover, creditors turnover. What do you mean by that? Those are the ratios which are applicable to calculate the operating cycle. That's why I'm going into that and doing it. Then you have the asset turnover ratio. That is an additional turnover ratio. How these are calculated? Debtors turnover ratio is calculated by credit sales divided by average debtors. Divided by average debtors. So generally what happens when you want to calculate ratios, they will give you financial statements, that is your P&L for the current year, and the balance sheet will be for 2 years, that you know, comparative, this year and last year. So when you say average debtors means what? This year balance plus last year balance, add the 2 and divide it by 2. That is your average debtors. Okay, right. So debtors turnover ratio is credit sales divided by average debtors. But debtors turnover period or debt collection period is somewhat different. I told you about that in terms of days. In terms of days. So how you calculate it? Average debtors divided by credit sales. Average debtors divided by credit sales into 365. Average debtors divided by credit sales into 365. So you get the debtor collection period or debt collection period. So how long you take to collect from your debtors. Then we calculate the stock turnover ratio or the stock turnover period. Cost of goods, cost of sales, cost of goods sold means cost of sales. You know what is cost of sales is. So cost of sales divided by average stock. Again, it is the same thing. This year stocks plus last year stocks divided by 2. And you know how to get the cost of sales also into 365. In the creditors turnover, credit purchase divided by average creditors, and that will give you the creditors turnover period. And the last ratio, assets turnover ratio, that is sales divided by average total assets. Total assets. So again, sales you can get it from your financial statement, and average total assets is from the balance sheet. You take the this year asset plus last year asset and divide it by 2. Okay, right. So that is all about ratios, and I will now go to the investor ratios. Right, investor ratios, we have about 6 ratios. Yeah. Sorry, there are about 7 ratios. Okay, Now these ratios might not be very important for you when it comes to your examination. Okay, but I'm not sure. Sometimes you could be tested also. But what is important here is the investor ratios are mostly calculated using certain market information, and some part of your company information also, right? Let's see one by one. Earnings per share. Now you know you are a company and you have shares in your company. So investors have come invested in your shares. They have put money in your shares. So the earnings per share means the return that you give to your shareholders. The return that you give to your shareholders. And how you calculate it? You calculate it by profit after tax divided by number of weighted average ordinary shares. Okay, this calculating the number of weighted average ordinary shares is somewhat a complex calculation. So we don't want to get into that detail, but just assume that it is like an average shares. So it's like what you had last year and what you had this year divided by 2, like something. But earnings per share will give you what sort of a return or how much of a return that you are creating to your shareholders or to your prospective investors. So how you calculate it? Profit after tax divided by number of weighted average ordinary shares. So what I will do is I will take this opportunity to show you a very important information. Let's go to this. So I hope you can see this, the financial statement that I gave you last week. Can you all see this?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now this in the income statement, when you go to the bottom, do you see something called basic earnings per share? This particular line. Basic earnings per ordinary share. Can you see this line? Right? Now I need to take this little bit upward. So this is the group, this is the bank. So both will be same. But let's look at the bank. Now this bank has a earnings per share, ordinary share as 15.18 rupees. 15.18 rupees. You see there within brackets they have given 15.18 rupees. So what does that mean? For every share that the investor or the shareholder has put in, you are earning 15 rupees, 15.18 rupees. Okay. If I put 1 rupee today to the business, I will make that 1 rupee into 15 rupees. I will make that 1 rupee into 15 rupees. That is what it means. 15.18. So let's look at what the Sampath Bank has. Let's look at that also. So their profit or loss statement, and the bottom you have this dividend per share. You see, right? What is the number? This year they have 8.25. 8.25. So I'm not comparing the numbers with one company with another, but what you need to understand is now in this company, when you invest 1 rupee, you get 8.25 profit generated by the business. Okay. So sorry, I have missed it. Earnings per share is 21.04. 21.04. 21.4. So when you put 1 rupee, this bank is making it to be 21 rupees. They are earning a 21 rupee profit from the business. Okay. So what we are trying to establish here is that earnings per share. And earnings yield ratio is where I told you it makes uses of some market information. So it is the once you have calculated the earnings per share, you can use that earnings per share divided by market price per share. Now this market price per share is what you get from the stock exchange. So you have to take the first you have to calculate the EPS and then you have to get the market price and you divide one by the other. You get the earnings yield. Earnings yield. This is again in percentage. The first one is in rupees. This is in percentage. Okay. Now, when you look at an exam question of this kind, you need to get a lot of information for this investor related ratio. But for other ratios, you can straight away calculate it from the financial statement. That's why you need to differentiate this very clearly. When it comes to investor ratios, you might need a lot of other information, market information, like the number of shares, like the market price here, right? Then when you go on, mostly the market price will be the important factor. Yes. Then you need to get the dividend per share. That is also another important aspect. So, earnings yield ratio is that. Price earnings ratio, that is, it's a relationship between the share price in the stock market and the earnings per share that you disclose. It's a relationship between those two. So whether the earnings that you make is reflected in the market price. Now, in the current state, of course, the share prices are at very low in the stock exchange. But there was a time where those prices were very high. So when you look at a comparison between the market price and the earnings per share, you will understand whether the earnings per share that you create in the business is really getting reflected in your market price. Is really getting reflected in your market price. And this is calculated in terms of times. This is calculated in terms of times that you have to remember. Then dividend per share. Dividend per share means you can take the share dividend that you have declared by the company and divide it by the number of average ordinary shares. Then you have the dividend cover ratio, dividend yield ratio. All these are making use of market information. So you have to remember these formulas. That is where the important part of this is. And the last part is dividend payout ratio. So that's all about financial ratios. So I'm not focusing very much on the investor ratios, but remaining ratios you have to remember: liquidity, profitability, and the other one is gearing, and also the turnover ratio. Okay. So what I will do is I will try to upload a handout on financial ratios where you have some examples, right? Examples in the sense questions for you to test and do it. Okay. So please try to do those. I will upload it by maybe say Tuesday or Wednesday so that you can go through this handout that we discussed now and you try to calculate the ratios by looking at the questions. So first time what you need to do is you have to look at this handout and look at the formulas and try to calculate these ratios. We will do it in the class. Then what you need to do is, without looking at the formulas, you need to try to calculate these ratios. That is where you get a practice of how these ratios are calculated. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for you to remember it when you go to the exam. Okay. So first you try to do it do those questions by looking at these formulas referring to this handout. Then close this handout and try to do it in your own without looking at the formulas. Okay. Then you will get a better idea. Okay. So that's all about today. Let's meet next week and hope you have a pleasant weekend, and please do revise. As I have been telling you all repeatedly, you have to continuously do the revision part. Otherwise, you all will miss out on the lessons that we have learned. So please start revising, and by now you should have a clear idea of where we are heading towards. So it's about another 2-3 topics that we need to cover. With that, we are done. So then we have to look at the past papers. So I think the past papers have been already uploaded in the portal. So you can go through those past papers. Those who can do some of the questions, try to do it. But at least have a look at those papers, which will give you a better idea. Okay, right. So let's meet you all next week. Sir, can we have your number in case? Okay, right. So I'll just put my number on the portal. For not in the portal, I'm sending a text now, so you all can have it. And if you want any clarifications, you can always send me through WhatsApp, where I will respond to you. So depending on the time, availability of time, but I will definitely respond. Maybe not immediately, or maybe in the evening I will be able to respond to you. So you can take this number, but only for lesson purposes. So make use of that, and you can always refer any questions or clarifications that you want to ask. Okay, so I have put it on the chats. You can have that number.